Welcome to Crossfire Conversations, the real history of gender. It's not what you've been told. Episode 3, The Birth of Medical Transition. In the aftermath of World War I, Berlin became one of the most radical cities in the world. The Weimar Republic was unstable, politically fractured, and economically volatile. But culturally, it was electric. Nightlife flourished, art exploded, old certainties were questioned, and inside a quiet building, lined with books and medical charts, a revolutionary idea began to take shape. What if gender identity and biological sex were not always the same? Magnus Hirschfeld, physician, sexologist, reformer, founded the Institute for Sexual Science in 1919. He proposed something daring for his time: that human sexuality and gender existed along a spectrum, that identity was not always reducible to anatomy. At the Institute, researchers documented case studies, they offered counseling, they performed some of the earliest known gender-affirming surgical procedures. For the first time in Western history, gender variance was not framed primarily as sin, but as science. Patients like Lily Elby sought medical intervention not for rebellion, but for relief. Relief from a profound internal dissonance. A new language began to form, not deviance or heresy, but instead, diagnosis. And yet, progress is rarely secure. In 1933, Nazi students stormed Hirschfeld's institute. Books were dragged into the streets. Archives were burned, research was erased in towering flames. Knowledge was declared dangerous. The promise of scientific understanding was consumed by ideology. But ideas do not die easily. 2 decades later, in 1952, an American named Christine Jorgensen returned from Denmark after undergoing surgery. Newspapers exploded with headlines. The public was transfixed. For many Americans, this was the first time the concept of medical transition entered living rooms. Some responded with fascination, others with empathy, and then there were some that responded with outrage. But something had changed. Gender variance was no longer confined to whispers. It was public. Medical language evolved. What was once termed gender identity disorder would later become gender dysphoria. The framing shifted from pathology to treatment, from abnormality to care. Major medical institutions began studying outcomes. Hormone therapies advanced. Surgical techniques improved. Medicine became the referee in a debate once governed by theology and law. But medicine is not static. In one era, it classified homosexuality as a disorder. In another, it removed that classification. Science always evolves, and that evolution raises an unsettling question. If identity is validated through medical consensus, what happens when consensuses change? Is gender dysphoria a neurological condition, a psychological experience, a social construct, a biological reality, or some combination of all four? Or is it something we are still struggling to define? For supporters, medical transition represents relief, measurable decreases in distress, affirmation of lived experience, and the alignment of body and identity. For critics, it raises concerns, particularly regarding youth treatment, long-term evidence, and the permanence of medical intervention. Both sides invoke science. Both sides invoke harm. Both sides claim compassion. And here lies the philosophical tension at the center of this episode. When science defines identity, what happens when science evolves? If research shifts, does identity shift with it? If consensuses change, does legitimacy change too? How much uncertainty can a society tolerate when real lives are affected by irreversible decisions? The story of medical transition is not simply a story of progress. It is a story of discovery, destruction, revival, and debate. From the quiet halls of Weimar Berlin, to the flames of censorship, to American newspaper headlines, to modern clinics and legislative chambers, the question has never purely been medical. It has always been philosophical. Who gets to define the self? Is it the church, the state, the individual, or the doctor? Or a combination thereof? And what happens when those authorities disagree? The birth of medical transition did not end the debate. It transformed it. And we are still living in its aftermath. Follow along on this 5-part series. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and comment any questions you have regarding this series, and I'll do my best to give you an answer.